This week on Dig Me Out.
I think it got played on the station despite my reviews. I turned it in and said, this sucks. And they went, well, we're going to play it anyways because we don't value your opinion very much.
Tim and Jay review Regretfully Yours by Superdrag.
Who sucked out the feeling? Who sucked out the feeling?
Hello and welcome to another episode of Dig Me Out. I'm your host, Tim Minichi, and joining me once again, Mr. Jason Ziak. Jay, it's episode 157, our second episode of our fourth season. And I'm calling this year the year we finally get to shit we've been talking about. Pardon my French. It's a long title for this year. But stuff we've been getting around to this year, or that we're going to get around to this year, that we've been, bands that we've talked about, referenced often. First episode was Remy Zero, a band that we previously mentioned and talked about in episodes. And this is a band that has come up a few times. Whenever we talk about power pop, well, not all the time, but occasionally they get mentioned. And I'm talking about Superdrag, Jay. And Superdrag is an interesting band in terms of our histories with it. Because I know you're a fan of Superdrag. When did you first get into them?
I got into them on this record, somewhat through the single, and I bought the two records after this. I didn't really fall in love with them until In the Valley of Dying Stars, where they kind of took more of a hard rock turn. With this, they still had the pop sensibilities, but they left some of the retro aspects of the band behind a little bit, and just became more of a straight up rock band.
Gotcha. I first discovered this band thanks to the wonderful world of WFAL Falcon Radio, our college radio station. Back in the 90s, I was assigned this record to review for the radio station. And I hated it at the time. Believe it or not.
What?
Yeah. So here's what it was, is that Sucked Out had been getting some like Buzzbin play. And I really didn't like that song. Especially the chorus, the way he delivers that chorus. I was into like Pearl Jam and Stone Temple Pilots and Alice in Chains. And here's this guy like sarcastically screaming, "Who sucked out the feeling?" And I'm like, F you, dude. And then I had to review the album, and I didn't like it at all. So I think it got played on the station despite my reviews. I think it was one of those where, I turned it in and said, this sucks. And they went, well, we're going to play it anyways because we don't value your opinion very much.
Yeah, I did some reviews, and that happened to me too.
Yeah. So
why am I doing this?
Right, exactly. Well, CMJ says it's going to be popular, so we're going to play it. Needless to say, though, my opinion changed throughout the years as I started to listen to their other albums, prompted me to then pick this record to want to go back to it because this was a record that I had very strong feelings against, and I wanted to see, if I returned to it, what would it bring to my ears this time around? I might have listened to it between then and now, but I know I listened to the other albums. Head Trip in Every Key and In the Valley of Dying Stars were definitely played more than this one. I know they've had some other records, but I don't think I've listened to them as much as those two records. Let's get into some history of Superdrag.
History of the band.
They formed in 1992 in Knoxville, Tennessee. They were originally, before they were Superdrag, they were called The Used. And it was John Davis, who's the lead singer, was actually playing drums in Brandon Fisher's band, who's the guitar player. Davis had started writing some songs, and a friend of the band named Don Coffey, who would eventually be in the band, said, well, you should be, basically singing. And Tom Pappas came in, and he went from guitar to bass, and they basically moved around in the band, and sort of Superdrag was born out of rearranging the band from what they used to have, what they were previously. So the band released 3 vinyl singles and then an EP, The Fabulous 8-Track Sounds of Superdrag, 8-track sound of Superdrag in 1995. One of their songs made it onto a CMJ compilation. They released their first album in 1996, which is this one, Regretfully Yours, on Elektra Records, and Sucked Out was a minor hit on MTV. They would follow that up with Head Trip in Every Key in 1998. That was followed by a sort of a rarities called Stereo 360 Sound and the 7 inches and unreleased, also in 1998. And then the Senorita EP in 1999. They returned with a full length on Arena Rock recording in 2000 with In the Valley of Dying Stars. They released some other one-offs for like EPs and whatnot. The Rock Soldier CD is a 5-song EP that was released on Arena Rock in 2000. And then they released Greetings from Tennessee in 2001, which was, well, with some songs that were re-recorded and some covers, such as Bastards of Young and You Really Got Me. And then they released their split with The Anniversary in 2001. In 2002, the album Last Call for Vitriol. Then a B-Sides and Rarities in 2007 called Changing Tires on the Road to Ruin. After a separation, they actually separated in 2003, I believe it was. In 2003, after John Davis had a couple of years of trouble with alcohol, he decided to basically clean up, and the band separated. He went on to do solo stuff along with other band members doing solo stuff, but they got back together and released in 2009 the album Industry Giants on their own Superdrag Sound Laboratories label. Band reunited for a couple of shows. They have Davis and Fisher are in the band called the Lees of Memory right now, and they re-released Regretfully Yours on vinyl. Not re-released because it never came out on vinyl, but they released it on vinyl in 2012, and then Head Trip in Every Key is supposed to be released on vinyl possibly this year, next year. So be on the lookout for those. So that is an abbreviated history of Superdrag. They have quite a few like EPs and singles and stuff that they get to, but that's basically it for Superdrag. If you would like to suggest an album for us to review, head on over to digmeoutpodcast.com and go ahead and suggest away. So, Jay, let's get into this record. Regretfully Yours. We both mentioned having a history with this band. I mentioned that it wasn't such a good history. And I'm probably wrong. I was probably wrong then, and I can admit that. Opening right up with Slot Machine. This is sort of like perfectly in my wheelhouse now. It's kind of amazing how your taste can change as it was mentioned during the Remy Zero review that we did last week in the comments about whether 20-year-old and 37-year-old versions of yourself would enjoy the music the same way. Well, I can tell you that 21 or 22-year-old me who listened to this record and hated it is completely different than the 39-year-old, I hate saying that, but version of me who thinks that this is a pretty damn fine record. Forever disparaging this album or this band back in 1996, and I apologize for anyone who was at that music department meeting where I said this was a terrible record and we shouldn't play it. This actually is a bit atypical of the rest of their sound. It's kind of a bit more straightforward. It doesn't have the pop sensibility that I think a lot of the record has, but it's still a good rock song. It's really short. It's only like 2.5 minutes. It's got a cool sort of driving guitar riff. I don't think it really starts to pick up until track 2, but Jay, I'm interested in what you think.
Yeah, it sounds like a song that you would, as a band start a set with. I can imagine seeing a band at Bernie's or something, small little club, and this is kind of a tune they would start off with, which is cool. I think one thing that's interesting about this song is it doesn't really have a chorus. There's some cool chord changes that occur that, I don't know, I guess you could argue maybe it's a chorus, but I think they're just, verses with some chord changes.
Mm-hmm.
But they have such a just strong sense of melody that it almost doesn't matter that they don't have a chorus. So
right.
I think it's a lesson, and you don't have to adhere to some like songwriting format to create melodic, memorable songs or even hooky songs. It's more complicated than that, and they kind of do it in an original way with this tune.
And they carry it. It's nice because it carries right into the second song, Phaser, which is where I think the band starts to shine. They combine the catchy vocal melody with what I think is the high point of the record, the guitar playing. There's just so many tasty guitar licks on this record, from song to song. And this one has them where they do this, like, I don't know what to call it, but it's like a lead at the ends of various measures where it's like super catchy, just like gets an earworm in your head where you just constantly hear that riff. I think it's one of the best songs on the record. But what do you think?
I agree. I think there's more dynamics here than the first song. It still has the signature tambourine that is through a lot of this record. It still does that driving guitar part, from time where they have the two fuzzed out guitars really just kind of like locked up together. We're like, no, you sort of get this like pulsating, underbelly with this him delivering the melodies over top. I think the thing that's interesting about this tune is that vocally it's a little bit different. His delivery is just a little bit different than what I'm used to for him. It almost sounds like at times it has like a Morrissey kind of quality to it, like it's a little croonery or like lower register,
right?
Which is kind of interesting for him. I think it sounds good. It's just going back and listening to it now, especially being more familiar with their later stuff. It's sort of one of those moments where I'm like, is that him singing? And okay, that's kind of cool. I can tell it's his voice, but it's just a different kind of a little slightly different character.
I think when he enters into what I would call the John Davis territory is track 3 with Carried. Great opening to that song. They just, boom, they're right into the song with his vocal and his guitar and the guitars and drums and everything. It sounds more, it's in his pop or power pop range that he sings in for the majority of the record and what I'm used to with him. Again, cool guitar riffs throughout this. They do this like, I don't know what we call it. This little back and forth guitar riff for the chorus. It's just like 2 notes, but it's super catchy. It's when he's singing the "Everybody Knows It's True, oh yeah" part. Just it's amazing to me that this record came out when it did, because it sounds, I guess, so unlike anything coming out in like 1996. I know there were some spurts of power pop here and there. There's just like really nothing comparable to it in this time frame. I don't know if you felt like that.
Yeah, this is a really sharp song. Like you said, it's him. It's a John Davis song. This is what the later era stuff is a lot like. Just great power pop, comes right in with the hook. Cool guitar melodies, lots of live energy. I think it's timeless sounding to me. This. There's some other songs on this record where, you kind of get that it's a mid '90s, early '90s influence, and from a guitar standpoint. But this is one where it could be a song that just came out now. It could have came out in the '80s. Could have came out in the '70s. Could have came out in the '90s. It's pretty timeless.
So track 4 is Sucked Out. That's the single that, if you're familiar with Superdrag in any way, you're probably familiar with this song. Interesting use of dynamics in this song, because when they actually get to the chorus and he sings the sucked out part, it's just a vocal and bass line essentially, which is pretty ballsy to go to that stripped down of a vocal for the and part for the chorus. I'm still not sure if I like his vocal when he actually goes to the chorus. When the way he screams, he sucked out the
come
feeling.
On, I love that.
I definitely like the song.
When his voice breaks.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I kind of like it. I don't know. It still weirds me out a little bit. I think what I appreciate more than anything is what the song is about, which is essentially like who sucked out the feeling of like writing music is essentially what he's talking about. Like he had this dream to play rock and roll, and now the fun of it is being sucked out, most likely by a major label.
Yeah, it's definitely got that 90s bittersweet kind of vibe to it. I love the vocal. I think that's so cool when you can hear it's just him by himself and you just hear him be able to do that, like control it, where like he can push it to the point where he knows his voice is going to break. And then that kind of becomes part of the signature part of the song. It's the ability to do that. I think is a little bit though in the overall story of this band. I think this song is probably not a great thing for them. I think it's so retro. It's so Buddy Holly, or you know what I mean. It's so kitschy that I think a lot of people probably came in wanting a whole record of that. And there's a couple other songs where they get close to it, but for the most part, especially the song after it, it's just not really the same. Not really the same sound at all. So. I think this is a song the band's known for. Unfortunately, I don't think it paints a very good picture of what they're about completely, and I think it almost makes them seem like a novelty band or something, like a Smash Mouth or a, I'm trying to think of there was another band that had like a really retro sound in the late 90s. Fastball, yeah. Like all of those bands, it kind of like lumps them in with those bands, which they're not like that at all.
No, not at all. Track 5, Cynicality. This is, I think, a really good demonstration of when you can do a lot with a little, because they essentially have like 3 guitar riffs or guitar parts for this song. There's the opening, which is basically like 2 notes played back and forth, and then there's a verse, which is like a chord progression, and then the chorus is again just like 2 notes. It's just back and forth, 2 rapid notes. So it's amazing because each of them has a very defined, melody over top of them, and they almost have like a different energy to them. The opening is kind of frantic and broken, and when you get to the chorus 2-note part, he repeats this vocal melody over and over again. I think it's "This Is Happening," and has a much different feel. This is where the songwriting, I think, sort of really starts to shine through, because they're able to take very simple pieces, put them together, and create something really unique and interesting, where it sort of sounds retro and I don't know, like British Invasion-ish, but has an edge that is very 90s and heavier. They're balancing those 2 influences pretty well on this song.
It's all about energy. I mean, this song is it's a 3.5 minutes of full on, laying into your guitars and trying to pull out of them using, not a ton of chords and a lot of structure that way, and really just trying to use energy and like how you lock up as a band and play together to convey the different parts of the songs and the sort of the overall feel, which I think it's a pretty stark contrast from Sucked Out, which is a lot more like, think about the contrast between the two songs. It's like that one's a lot more like somebody sat down and was like, okay, we're going to play this part, we're going to start here, and then we're going to end here, and then there's this build, and then I'm going to do this. And, Sucked Out almost feels like heavily scripted and manicured and edited compared to something like this, where it's just guys laying into their instruments. You know what I mean? And creating a song out of it. It's very simple, but the result is, I think, to your point, actually pretty sophisticated. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I agree. Track 6, Destination Ursa Major, I guess carries some of that over, taking simple ideas but making them work. They have that just like, there's a big bend. They do it like 3 times. Very simple idea, but they incorporate it well. And then when they get to the chorus, or maybe it's the pre-chorus, again, they're doing just like a simple like 2-note thing, but they drop the heaviness and the loudness. And if they play it clean, it's not really 2-note because it changes based on where the bass line is. But it's a back and forth little guitar part. Really cute, cool use of dynamic. At this point, like the band's just kind of, I think you're getting the point if you're not familiar with Superdrag, is like, this is a band that knows how to write songs and write parts that are unique within each song, so that you're not like just getting a 4-chord progression in the verse and then a 4-chord progression in the chorus. They're making each part wholly unique and interesting, which a lot of bands don't bother to do.
Yeah, this song is a good example of all of the things that this record does. If you were to condense, I think, this whole record into one song, it might be this song. So you got the bendy, they got the guitars that are kind of driving and fuzzy, but like they do some bend stuff where kind of the pitch shifts a little bit, gets kind of weird either through a lead or through 2 guitars playing together. So there's just like dissonance going on. Great melody over top, a lot more dynamics on this song than the previous one, in terms of, like you said, it's getting a little quieter, going to the 2-chord or picking part. And this is a song where the solo, they do this, I think, through the rest of the record at this point, is the solo ends up, they mimic the vocal melody, which is always that's just always a cool thing. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't have an idea for a guitar solo, when you get to a part where it's like, okay, this feels like we should do something here, just come up with a cool way to play that, refrain that melody that's in the verse of the chorus,
right,
on guitar. It always kind of works, and it's just a cool element to bring everything together.
Whitey's theme is one of the few instances where they do like a kind of a build, and they do it in a really cool way. The song starts out with just sort of like a one guitar playing a guitar riff, and then you kind of hear off in one of the channels or one of the speakers this riff come in, sort of buried in the background, and then the two guitars start playing together, and the drums come in. They build it more and more, and then the drums get louder, and the guitars get louder, and it's just a really cool build and build up to the start of the verse. Sort of the complete opposite of Carried, where they just are boom, they're into the song. And this is, I think, a more, I guess you'd say, for them, a more relaxed song. It doesn't have quite the aggressive energy of, say, Cynicality, but it's still, once they get into that guitar riff, the energy, the drums pick up in the tempo and stuff like that. But the verses sort of tend to lay back a little bit. But again, this has got some really, really tasty guitar stuff going on.
Yeah, I think that they drive that riff almost into the ground a little bit too much. Like by the end of the song, you're kind of tired of hearing it. I think it's an awesome riff. It's just a little too much of a good thing. And I think it's good. Like it's missing a chorus, but it's good in that that riff. It almost could be a hook. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I almost wish that it was rewritten in a little bit more concise way. It's the longest song on the record.
Yeah.
I don't think it needs to be. think it needs to be. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see where you're going. Track 8, Truest Love, them playing around with dissonance.
Shoegaze almost.
Yeah, almost shoegaze. Has a definite, that tremoloed dissonant guitar going on that is reminiscent of like a Swerve Drive or some of those other bands, which is a cool, different influence that you weren't really expecting probably when you're listening to the first half of the record.
The chorus is a lot more dynamic than you'd hear in a shoegaze song, though.
Oh yeah,
like
definitely.
He lays into that he belts out that line, and there's a lot more. Just the music kind of comes down, but musically, those guitars for sure, super fuzzed out, almost to the point of being like just white noise at times in those verses.
Track 9, What If You Don't Fly. This is a fine song. It's actually tied with Carried for one of the shortest songs on the record, or the shortest song. I think it's them and they're most comfortable. It doesn't get overly loud. It has the energy. His vocal's pretty good, but it's, I don't know, it didn't really do a lot for me. Your opinion?
I think it's a good good companion to Sucked Out. If it wasn't the B-side to Sucked Out, it probably should have been.
Right.
It's definitely got the retro kind of, that thing you do, the Wonders kind of feel to it. I like the sound of the song. I like the verse of the song. I like the idea. It's just missing the chorus. If you're going to write a song this fun, you got to have a killer chorus, and it kind of doesn't have a killer chorus.
No.
So I think that's the biggest flaw with it.
Track 10, Garmonbozia, which is a small country in, I don't know where it is. It's a little bit different for them. It's got this, I don't know how to describe it. The guitar riff, again, it could have been a shoegaze if they had I don't know, that lead that he's playing at the beginning of the song. It's he kind of drives it. I think if he put a little delay on there, it would have been on another Swerve Driver record or something along those lines. But then they completely eliminate the guitar into the verse, and it gets a lot quieter before they get to the chorus, where the tambourine comes in, like you mentioned on most of the songs, and the guitar riff returns. And that guitar riff sort of stays throughout most of the song until they get to the end. There's like this ascending guitar riff that's kind of cool throughout the end of it. But I kind of felt like, this is a 90s album, so there's a little bit of filler, I think, on this record. I mentioned that What If You Don't Fly wasn't necessarily one of my favorites. It's a fine song, but it's not necessarily something that they're not necessarily doing. This one's another one where I kind of felt like, this would have been maybe better as a B-side or on a rarities comp.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the best part about this song is that you notice the bass finally on the record. It has like I think it carries the melody through a lot of the tune, which is interesting because the album's so, guitar driven, guitar focused. The bass does enough underneath that it kind of stands out, and you have this really cool layer of melody underneath these guitars that are wailing at times, and the one's doing like, I don't know if it's a tremolo bend or what it is, but there's that little bit of a pitch bend going on as the two guitars kind of like are driving over top of this really melodic bass line.
Mm-hmm. Now, for as unimpressed as I was, because I'm a hard person to impress, with 9 and 10, track 11 and a kicker. This is definitely a kicker. Kicking the pants after those two songs. Cool guitar riff to start the song. Clean guitar in the verses that it's good melody over top of it, and then he just rips into the chorus. Nice and short, and it's one of the highlights on the record for me. I would have put it closer to the front of the record.
I agree. I don't know. It's a weird being track 11. It might be my favorite song on the record. It's the right combination of kind of that retro 50s rock and roll, early 60s rock and roll thing with modern fuzz, and energy. It's very smart. It's very short. It has some really nice harmonies in the chorus, which they don't do a ton of. They do some harmonies, but they don't go overboard with them. Mm-hmm. They work really well on this really cool riff that they intro the song with, and then they reprise. And it's one of those songs where you don't necessarily think of it as being short. It just feels like right, and then when you go back and look, you're like, oh wow, it's only 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Like, okay, there's so much that happens in that 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Yeah, so many good things that you kind of, it's a little shocking that it's that brief.
Speaking of shocking, track 12, Nothing Good Is Real. This is the first time the band, I would say, goes slow. I don't necessarily like the band in this mode. He doesn't have as much to do with his vocal. I like when his vocal is on top of everything and sort of propelling the song forward. And with this song, he's sort of playing back. He's sort of, letting the song dictate his melody, and it doesn't necessarily work as well for me. This definitely sounds like a song that could have been left off the record. How about you?
I agree. I think there's maybe a mix of this record that you could do that this song might have a place on. Obviously, I think there's absolutely zero reason to have 13 songs on this record.
Yeah.
If you got it down to between 8 and 10, this song could, in one of those concepts, maybe find a place. But I agree, it's not an ideal fit for this band and what they do well.
And the last track, 13, it's funny, when I was listening to this song again, I was like, this song sounds like an encapsulation of the whole record. Like, thank you for listening to our record. Now we're going to throw out some riffs that we previously used through the record.
It needs like a voiceover over top of it.
Yeah, like, thank
you for joining us
on this record. Special thanks to not Ben Montage, that was in Remy Zero. But whoever was produced this record. Thank you to So-So for producing. Thank you for So-and-so for mixing.
It's funny. I'm playing it as you're doing that. It sounds perfect. You don't need to mix that in the show like that.
I'll try to do so. But yeah, I mean, this was a fine closing track. I think if you kicked off like 3 songs and got this down to 10, I think it's an awesome record.
I agree.
Alert.
Yeah, I think this song sounds. It's like, to me, it's like track. It's like the first song on the record. It's like not a great from a songwriting standpoint, but it just sounds like a really good live band just wailing. I mean, just laying into a song and just having a blast. And I'm sure live this sounded great, and they had fun playing it. And I think that energy comes across on the recording of it. So from that aspect, I think it's fun to listen to. But I agree. It's let's get to what we think about the record.
Well, I already tipped my hat when I said spoiler alert. I'm at a worthy album with this record. I'm at 10 songs. There's probably 3 that I'd kick off that I think that it just runs a little bit long for an album or for a band like this. I need it short and sweet. They're at 42 minutes roughly for this album, and I think you could get it down to like 35, 34 minutes, and it'd be a damn tight, fine record. So where are you at, Jay?
Totally agree. I like this band so much, and I like all the songs. I just don't feel like they're all necessary. So I would be super happy with 9 to somewhere around 9 songs.
Cool. Well, if you agree or disagree, you can of course head on over to our Facebook page, our Twitter, or our website and chime in with your thoughts on Superdrag and their album Regretfully Yours. Of course, you can leave us some feedback over at iTunes, and you can request your own album for us to review at digmeoutpodcast.com on our Request a Review page. That's it for us this week. We'll be back. I think we're going to be back next week. And Jay and I will have something to say about possibly an album from the 90s. That's
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. I don't want to give it away, but there's a good chance it's going to happen. So for Jay, I'm Tim, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Dig Me Out.
Join the conversation about this episode at digmeoutpodcast.com, where you can find links to our Facebook page and Twitter feed, as well as links to our Request a Review and merchandise pages.